Russell Earl Bucklew's name has become forever tied to one of Missouri's most disturbing and violent cases. A story of obsession, cruelty, and ultimately execution after decades of legal battles. What began as the breakdown of a relationship spiraled into a night of terror, leaving one man dead, a woman beaten, raped, and kidnapped, children traumatized, and police engaged in a rolling gun battle with a man who had vowed to never return to prison. Born in 1968, Bucklew grew up in Missouri. His childhood was marked by instability, and as he grew older, his life followed a familiar path for those who would later enter the criminal justice system. There were reports of violence, a reputation for anger, and a controlling nature that made his relationships volatile. By the mid-1990s, he was living with his girlfriend, Stephanie Ray, also known as Stephanie Pruitt. Their relationship was rocky, but for a time she endured his temper and his possessiveness. When she finally decided to end it, she may not have realized how far Bucklew's obsession with her would drive him. In February 1996, Stephanie moved out of the trailer they shared. She found refuge with Michael Sanders, a single father who lived in another trailer home in Cape Girardeau County, Missouri. Sanders was known locally as a hardworking, caring man devoted to his young children. He welcomed Stephanie into his home, offering her stability and safety after her troubled relationship. But Bucklew saw it as betrayal. His jealousy festered into rage, and he began stalking and threatening Stephanie. The violence started even before the final deadly night. On March 6th, just weeks before the murder, Bucklew returned to the trailer, armed with a knife. He assaulted Stephanie, cutting her and beating her, and made chilling threats. He warned her that if she stayed with Sanders, he would kill him. The words would prove prophetic. On the evening of March 21st, 1996, Bucklew acted on those threats. Armed with 2 pistols and consumed with anger, he followed Stephanie to Michael Sanders' home. As she entered the trailer, Bucklew forced his way inside. He moved with deliberate purpose, holding a pistol in each hand, and walked down the hallway where Sanders was waiting. Without hesitation or words, he opened fire, shooting Sanders multiple times. The bullets tore through his body, and Sanders collapsed in front of his children and Stephanie. He died on the floor of his own home, killed in cold blood. The nightmare did not end there. Bucklew turned on Stephanie, striking her repeatedly with a pistol and breaking her jaw. He handcuffed her in front of her children, who were screaming in fear. The image of their father bleeding to death and their mother being dragged away would be burned into their memories forever. Bucklew forced Stephanie into his car. As he drove, he made grotesque demands, threatening to kill her if she resisted. At gunpoint, he ordered her to perform sexual acts, and when they stopped in a secluded wooded area, he taped her hands and raped her. By this point, Stephanie was battered, terrified, and utterly trapped. Bucklew gloated about what he had done and made it clear that he was not finished. He told her he would not go back to prison, and that if the police tried to take him, he would kill as many of them as he could. Soon after, a Missouri state trooper spotted Bucklew's car, and a chase began. What followed was a terrifying gun battle on the highways near St. Louis. Bucklew fired at officers as they pursued him, bullets shattering windows and glass. Officers returned fire. Stephanie was still in the vehicle, wounded in the chaos, and she feared that she would not survive. The chase ended when police managed to corner Bucklew, and after an exchange of gunfire, he was finally subdued and taken into custody. He was injured, Stephanie was injured, and a trooper had also been hurt by flying glass during the shootout. Even in custody, Bucklew was far from finished. Awaiting trial in the Cape Girardeau County jail, he began plotting his escape. He starved himself deliberately, losing weight so he could fit into a trash bag. Hiding inside, he managed to slip past guards and escape from custody. On the run, he went straight to Stephanie's family. Armed with a hammer and a knife, he broke into the home of her mother and her mother's fiancé. He attacked them savagely, striking and stabbing, but they managed to survive. Bucklew was recaptured after a manhunt, and the escape attempt only added to the already overwhelming case against him. When his trial began, prosecutors laid out the horrifying chain of events. They described the jealousy and threats, the home invasion, the execution-style shooting of Michael Sanders, the brutal beating and rape of Stephanie, the high-speed gun battle with police, and the audacious escape attempt followed by more violence. The picture painted was one of a man who was not only violent but also relentless, someone who could not be contained even behind bars. The jury convicted him on every charge: first-degree murder, kidnapping, burglary, forcible rape, and multiple counts of armed criminal action. In the penalty phase, prosecutors argued that Bucklew was beyond redemption. The sheer cruelty of the crime, the trauma inflicted on children who witnessed their father's murder, and his determination to continue hurting others, even in custody, all pointed to one conclusion: he was too dangerous to live. The jury agreed, and Russell Earl Bucklew was sentenced to death. He also received additional decades of prison time for the other crimes, but Bucklew's story did not end in the courtroom. His case would stretch on for more than 20 years as his lawyers mounted appeals. The focus shifted from the crimes themselves to the question of how he would die. Bucklew suffered from a rare medical condition called cavernous hemangioma, which caused large, fragile blood vessels in his head and neck. His attorneys argued that lethal injection with pentobarbital would cause him to choke on his own blood, essentially torturing him to death. This argument reached the highest levels of the American justice system. In 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 against him, deciding that the Constitution does not guarantee a painless execution, and that his proposed alternative execution with nitrogen gas was not viable under Missouri law. The ruling cleared the final obstacle to his death sentence being carried out. On October 1st, 2019, more than 2 decades after Michael Sanders was murdered, Russell Bucklew was led into the execution chamber at the state prison in Bon Terre, Missouri. Witnesses said he showed little emotion. His final meal, recorded by the Department of Corrections, included 2 sandwiches, 2 orders of fries, a soda, and a banana split. As the lethal drugs flowed into his veins, he closed his eyes. Reports said his execution lasted less than 20 minutes, with no major complications despite years of debate about his medical condition. For the family of Michael Sanders, the execution marked the end of a long legal saga. Stephanie, who had lived through the terror of that night, had survived to see her abuser brought to justice. But no execution, no matter how final, could erase the memory of March 21st, 1996, the night Michael Sanders was shot down in front of his children, the night Stephanie was kidnapped, beaten, and raped, and the night an entire community was shaken by the violence of one man. Russell Earl Bucklew's name is remembered not only for the crime he committed, but also for the extraordinary legal battle that followed. His case became a symbol of the ongoing debate about the death penalty in America, about justice, and about the limits of compassion for those who show none themselves. Yet at the heart of the story is not the killer, but his victims. The man who died protecting the woman he loved, the woman who endured unimaginable cruelty and survived, and the children who lost their father in a storm of violence they could never forget.